Before we get into this story, picture one moment. Patrick Kane has the puck, the entire arena waiting for him to make the play everyone expects. But instead of pulling off his usual magic, he sent a no-look pass to a teammate most fans barely recognized at the time. That teammate takes one step, fires a shot, and puts the puck in the top corner like it's nothing. The crowd erupts. And here's what nobody understood in that moment. The guy scoring that goal wasn't a top draft pick or some highly hyped prospect. He wasn't even supposed to be in the NHL. He was an undrafted winger from a rough mining town, playing on the cheapest contract possible, trying to survive in a league that had already rejected him twice. Yet every shift, he kept showing more speed, more skill, more chemistry with Kane than anyone expected. Fans started asking each other the same question. Who is this guy? Freeze that thought for a second, because everything happening on that ice, every goal, every pass, every bit of confidence, goes completely against the path he was supposed to have. Nothing about his journey suggested he would ever reach this level. So how does someone go from being ignored and overlooked to becoming one of the most dangerous players in the sport? To understand that, we need to go back to where his fight started, long before he ever touched NHL ice. He grew up in a small coal mining town where the air was thick, the buildings were worn down, and almost nobody talked about big dreams because life felt heavy enough already. His parents separated when he was just a baby, and both struggled to find stability in the chaos of the post-Soviet economy. That meant he was raised almost entirely by his grandparents, two people doing everything they could just to keep the household together. And that's where the first spark in his life was lit. His grandfather, former amateur hockey player, saw something in him early on, something worth fighting for. Even when money was tight and the family was barely managing, his grandfather found a way to buy him his first pair of skates. He became his driver, his mentor, his coach, and his anchor. He once said that without his grandfather, he'd probably still be back in that mining town doing nothing with his life. And he meant it. His motivation wasn't fame or fortune. It was paying back the person who believed in him before anyone else knew his name. But even with that support, his path forward wasn't smooth. The world outside his hometown didn't know his story, didn't care about his sacrifices, and wasn't waiting to welcome him. In fact, his first real taste of the hockey world came with a door slammed right in his face. When he finally stepped into the wider hockey world, he learned something fast. Talent doesn't guarantee anything. He entered the NHL draft with hope, but the league didn't even hesitate to shut the door on him. 2 drafts came and went. 30 teams made their picks. His name was never called. The message was clear. Too small, too light, not built for the North American game. He wasn't just overlooked, he was dismissed, and nobody apologized for it. But instead of breaking him, that rejection hardened him. If the NHL didn't want him, he would find another path and force them to notice. His next stop was the KHL, but even that wasn't a smooth beginning. His first team was known for physical play, not skill. Practices were rough, games were even rougher, and every shift felt like he was one hit away from being crushed. For a smaller, skilled player, it was survival more than development. But he adapted. He kept moving, kept working, kept sharpening the parts of his game nobody could take away from him. Slowly, he started to stand out. A trade to a top club finally gave him the environment he needed. Surrounded by better players, he didn't just improve, he exploded. His scoring rose, his confidence grew, and he became a major contributor to a championship run. Suddenly, the same people who once overlooked him were forced to admit he had something special. Then came the moment that could have given him a quiet, secure life. Big money offers, long-term contracts, a chance to stay home and be a star in Russia. Most players dream of that kind of stability. Most players take the guaranteed future, but he wasn't most players. Deep down, the sting of being ignored by the NHL still burned. It wasn't enough for him to be successful in one league. He wanted to prove something to the league that doubted him. So he made the choice nobody expected. He walked away from the money. He walked away from comfort. He walked away from guaranteed success. And he signed the cheapest, most basic NHL contract he could get. People called it reckless. People said he was throwing away his career. People said he'd never make it in North America. He heard all of it, and he didn't care, because he wasn't chasing safety. He was chasing the chance to prove every single doubt wrong. And that brings us to Chicago, where everything changed almost overnight. When he arrived in Chicago, nobody talked about him like a future star. He wasn't treated like a franchise piece or even a sure thing. He was just another name on a cheap contract, trying to earn a spot in a locker room full of champions who already knew what winning looked like. He didn't speak much English, he didn't know the city, and he didn't have any built-in advantage. All he had were his skills and the pressure of knowing he had walked away from fortune just to stand in that room. At first, he blended into the background, quiet, focused, observing everything. But the moment he stepped onto the ice in training camp, things shifted. Coaches noticed the way he handled the puck, how quickly he read plays, and how he always seemed 2 steps ahead. He wasn't flashy for the sake of being flashy. He was efficient, sharp, and unpredictable. That earned him a shot on a line with Patrick Kane, something nobody expected. Putting a rookie beside one of the best players in the world is not normal. But from the first shift, it looked like they'd been playing together for years. Their timing clicked instantly. Kane made plays few players could follow, and he followed every one of them. And just like that, the unknown guy turned into a problem for the rest of the league. He started scoring, he started assisting, he started dominating. Night after night, he made defenders look slow and goalies look lost. Fans learned his name fast, and the entire league had to adjust to someone they never even bothered to scout properly. By the end of his first season, he wasn't just good. He was one of the best rookies the NHL had seen in years. 30 goals, nearly 50 assists, and full control of the pace every time he touched the puck. He won the Calder Trophy, beating out rookies who were hyped long before he ever got a chance. But success brings its own problems. Chicago was up against the salary cap, and his next contract would be big, bigger than they could manage. So, in a move that shocked everyone, the team traded him. Not because he failed, but because he succeeded too fast. One moment, he was part of a perfect duo. The next, he was on a plane to Columbus, leaving behind the chemistry he'd built and the city that finally recognized his talent. In Chicago, he proved he belonged. In Columbus, he would have to prove he could do it without Patrick Kane by his side. Landing in Columbus forced him into a completely different reality. This time, there was no superstar beside him to share the spotlight or carry the pressure. He wasn't arriving as a surprise rookie anymore. He was arriving as the centerpiece of a major trade, expected to lead, produce, and change the direction of the team. Critics circled immediately. They said Chicago made him look better than he really was. They said he was a product of Kane's talent. They said this move would expose him. And if he had any doubts, Columbus wasn't the place to hide them. It's a hard-working city with a fan base that demands effort and a team that needed someone who could push them forward. He had no safety net now. Everything would come down to how he performed without the help of the star who first unlocked his game. He answered every doubt the only way he knew how, by taking over. From the moment he put on that jersey, he played like someone with something to prove. He wasn't just scoring, he was driving every part of the offense. His speed, his vision, his creativity, everything stepped up another level. And by the end of his first season, he didn't just silence critics. He crushed the entire narrative. He broke the franchise scoring record with 82 points and dragged Columbus into the playoffs. And then he did it again the next season. Better numbers, bigger moments, and a playoff performance that stamped his name into league history. When Columbus swept the 62-win Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the greatest regular season teams ever, he was at the heart of it. Every game, every key moment, he played like a star who didn't need anyone to prove it. The team didn't want to lose him. They offered him a massive long-term deal. They tried everything to keep him. But once again, he refused to stay comfortable. Instead of locking in security, he chose uncertainty. He decided to test free agency, knowing it would upset fans, knowing it would confuse the media, and knowing it would put even more pressure on him to perform. He wasn't chasing comfort. He was chasing the right stage. And when free agency opened, he found it. The New York Rangers gave him a huge contract, 7 years, over $80 million, and a chance to take on one of the biggest markets in sports. It looked like the perfect payoff for everything he fought for. A new city, a superstar role, a deserved spotlight. But right when he finally reached the highest point of his career, something he never saw coming hit him harder than any check on the ice. Not from hockey, not from a team, not from a critic, from his own home country. For a while in New York, everything felt like it had finally come together. He played with confidence, the crowd embraced him, and the league recognized him as one of the most dangerous offensive players in the sport. After years of fighting for every inch of respect, he was finally getting the recognition he earned. But success often brings shadows with it, and this came from a place he thought he'd left behind. Out of nowhere, A story surfaced in a pro-Kremlin newspaper accusing him of assaulting a young woman years earlier in Latvia. The accusation came from a former coach known for his loyalty to the Russian government. It had no evidence, no backing, and no credibility. But it wasn't meant to be believable. It was meant to send a message. Months earlier, he had publicly criticized Vladimir Putin, something almost no Russian athlete dares to do. Speaking openly against that kind of power is dangerous. And the response was predictable, a fabricated story designed to damage his career and shake his life. He wasn't worried about his image. He wasn't worried about hockey. He was worried about the people who raised him, his family still living in Russia, the people who didn't have the luxury of being far away from political pressure. So he stepped away from the Rangers, not for rest, not for recovery, but to make sure his family was safe. For the first time in his career, hockey wasn't a main fight. And for the first time, he faced a challenge he couldn't outscape. He missed 9 games. 9 games filled with uncertainty, fear, and the realization that the biggest danger he'd ever faced wasn't on the ice. It was the weight of politics reaching across borders into his personal life. But when he returned, he didn't come back looking broken or shaken. He came back looking sharper, more determined, more focused than ever. If the goal was to intimidate him, it failed. The attempt to knock him down only made him harder to stop. Season after season, he produced at a level few players in the league could match. 90-plus points became normal. His presence on the ice turned into a constant threat, and he became the centerpiece of the Rangers' offense. Then came the season that sealed his legacy, 120 points, nearly 50 goals, total control every time he touched the puck. From a polluted mining town, to undrafted, to overlooked, to traded, to targeted, and still standing at the top of the sport. He didn't rise because everything went his way. He rose because he never stopped pushing when everything went against him. His career proves something people rarely admit. The biggest leaps come from the biggest risks. He walked away from millions twice. He bet on himself when no one else would. And every time the world tried to shut him down, he used it as fuel. So the real question left is simple. What do you do when the world tells you no? Because his story shows exactly what happens when your answer is, I don't care. I'm going anyway.